He ordered dinner. But when he opened the door and saw two Little Couriers, his entire life collapsed into one question: what am I even doing? Elias Monroe, a millionaire CEO used to luxury, power, and boardroom silence, never expected that a $14 takeout order would open the door to everything he'd been missing. Two small kids stood at his doorstep, too thin, too quiet, too grown for their age. They weren't just delivering food, they were delivering a truth that hit deeper than any corporate failure. Who lets children walk the streets alone at night? Why did their mother look like she hadn't slept in weeks? And how does a man with everything rediscover what it means to belong? This is the story of one quiet knock that unraveled a powerful man and rebuilt him into something human. A story of sacrifice, illness, dignity, and the kind of family you don't inherit, you choose. So, would you open the door? Would you stay when walking away is easier? If this story touches something in you, hit that like, share with someone who needs hope today, and don't forget to subscribe to join us for more real, raw, and redemptive journeys. Now, let's begin. The city had gone quiet, 30 floors above the restless pulse of downtown. Elias Monroe leaned back in his leather chair and closed his eyes for just a second. The lights in his office glowed soft and muted. Across the glass wall behind him, steel towers flickered like frozen lightning under a velvet sky. Emails still pinged somewhere in the background, but he didn't bother looking. He had done enough today. Another board call, another crisis over projected revenue, another investor suggesting he was slipping, distracted, not the same Elias Monroe. He hadn't eaten since morning. It wasn't that he forgot. He just didn't feel hungry until the headaches arrived. So he tapped into the app, ordered something warm, something fast steak and rice from the place 3 blocks over, reliable, efficient, the kind of small ritual that kept his life from unraveling. He loosened his tie, unbuttoned the top of his shirt, checked the time, 9:12 p.m., late, but not unusual. The food should arrive soon. A soft ding from the elevator echoed through the hallway outside his corner office. Elias didn't bother looking up. The delivery usually dropped outside his office door, but the knock came. A light knock, hesitant. Then again, 2 sharp raps, quicker this time. He sighed, pushing himself up. His joints cracked louder than he liked to admit. Reaching into his wallet, Elias pulled out a bill large enough to be generous, not so large as to be patronizing. He walked across the marble floor, barefoot, his footsteps quiet. He expected to open the door and see a 20-something on a bike, earbuds in, face lit by phone glow. But that's not what he saw. He froze. 2 small figures stood just outside the door, a boy and a girl, no older than 7, maybe 6. They wore red beanies too big for their heads and matching insulated vests. The delivery backpack between them was nearly half their height. Their cheeks were pink from the cold. The boy held the bag tightly, while the girl looked up with a wide, toothy grin. "Your order, sir," she said cheerfully. Elias didn't speak. He didn't know how. The hallway lights cast a soft golden halo around them. For a second, he wondered if this was a dream, some strange hallucination conjured by hunger and exhaustion. He crouched slightly, still holding the tip in one hand. "You're not delivery drivers," he said, voice low, calm. "You're kids." The girl blinked. The boy said nothing. His expression was older than his age, unreadable. "We're helping our mom," the girl said simply. "She's tired tonight." Elias swallowed. The hallway felt colder now, the marble beneath his feet less firm. He studied their faces, thin coats, chapped lips, fingers red and raw from wind. He had seen this look before, years ago, in a hospital waiting room, on a much smaller face, and it crushed something in him that hadn't moved in a long time. "Where's your mom now?" he asked gently. "At home," said the boy. "We know the way." He didn't move to enter, didn't fidget, just stood there like someone who had carried too much for too long and decided to carry it anyway. "Do you do this often?" The girl hesitated, then nodded. "Only when she's sick." Elias took the food bag carefully, slow, like it was something sacred. Then he slid the folded bill into the girl's mittened hand. She looked at it, but didn't smile this time. "Do you need help getting home?" he asked. The boy shook his head. "We're good." And with that, they turned and walked away. The girl looked back once. The boy didn't. Their boots made soft squeaks on the hallway tile as they reached the elevator. The doors opened. They stepped in, turned around. Elias watched them disappear. Then, silence. He didn't go back to his desk. He stood for a long while in the hallway, holding a bag of food that had gone cold before he even noticed. When he finally returned inside, he placed it on the counter and sat down, staring at nothing in particular. He tried to focus on his emails, but the words blurred. The numbers no longer made sense. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something older, something like remembering. He hadn't felt this in years, that kind of aching stillness. The one that asks, "Why did this happen, and what are you going to do about it?" He got up again, slowly, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and stared out at the world below. The city was so quiet from this height. How many children out there were walking the streets for reasons they shouldn't have to? How many mothers were holding their breath, praying the cold wouldn't make their kids sick this time? How many people had no one knocking on their door to ask, "Are you okay?" Elias stood with his hands in his pockets, the silence wrapping around him like fog. By the time he picked up his phone again, he wasn't hungry anymore, but he had made a decision. He scrolled to the delivery app and pressed help, then chat with support. Then 2 children just delivered my order. Please send me the name and contact of their household or manager. This isn't safe. When the automated system responded with canned replies, he typed again. This time, shorter, sharper. "This is Elias Monroe, CEO, Bright Code." 20 minutes later, he had an address. He didn't even change his clothes. The drive down to the south end of Belmont took 20 minutes. It felt longer. Elias didn't turn on music. The silence inside the car was absolute, except for the occasional tap of his fingers against the leather steering wheel, a restless rhythm that had returned out of nowhere. He hadn't done that since the funeral. The address the delivery company had given him pointed to an apartment building he didn't recognize, though he must have passed it a dozen times on the way to Brightcode's satellite office. It sat on the edge of a block that progress had skipped. No new windows, no trendy signage, just a brick wall covered in old vines and shadows. He parked on the street and looked up. 3rd floor, Unit 7B. A flickering porch light above the entrance buzzed faintly, illuminating the cracked concrete steps leading inside. The buzzer panel had 4 buttons missing. He pressed the one for 7B. Nothing. He pressed again, longer this time. A scratchy buzz, then a dull click. The door groaned open. The stairwell smelled like stale paint, and something boiled long ago. No elevator. Elias climbed slowly, his knees reminding him he wasn't 30 anymore. He paused briefly on the 2nd floor landing, taking a deep breath. It wasn't fatigue. It was nerves. He didn't know what he was walking into, and that unsettled him more than he cared to admit. When he reached the 3rd floor, he found Unit 7B easily. The number was written in black marker on a piece of paper taped to the door. The paper had curled edges. The tape was yellowing. He knocked once, no answer. Then again, firmer, footsteps. The door opened a crack, then stopped. A woman stood there, wrapped in a faded green cardigan with sleeves stretched over her palms. Her hair was pulled back loosely. Tired eyes, hollow cheeks, thin lips set in a line that said she didn't have time for games, but had learned long ago how to be polite when she had to. Yes, he cleared his throat, suddenly unsure of the right tone. I'm Elias Monroe. I believe your kids, Noah and Elena, delivered food to me tonight. The woman's posture didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened. She pulled the door a little closer to her side. I'm Raina, she said slowly. Is there a problem? No. Elias hesitated. I wasn't expecting kids. I was concerned. Her voice was careful, not cold, but prepared. Why, there's 6, maybe 7. 7 and 8, she corrected. Noah's older. That doesn't make it okay. Raina didn't answer right away. Her fingers gripped the edge of the door a little tighter. Her voice stayed calm, but underneath it, he could hear something else: shame, anger, maybe even fear. I didn't send them, she said. Not the first time. Elias blinked, meaning they did it themselves. She sighed, took the delivery bag when I was asleep, came back with $20 and a proud look I couldn't fight. The next day, they did it again. She finally opened the door wider. A wave of warm air escaped, laced with the scent of tea and something earthy lentils. Maybe. The room behind her was dim. 2 small beds were pushed into the corner of the open living space. A heater hummed in the background, working overtime. Despite the age of everything, the apartment was clean, lived in, but cared for. Survival, but with dignity. Raina stepped back. You can come in if you want, but I'm not here for handouts. And I don't want your pity. Elias entered slowly, quietly. He looked around, taking it all in with the kind of quiet attention that had once made him brilliant in business meetings. On the kitchen counter, a plastic tub of medication sat next to a clipboard of paper forms. On the wall near the door, a schedule written in marker pickup, drop-off, appointments. Someone had drawn stars next to Wednesday. Story night. Raina motioned toward a wooden chair at the tiny kitchen table. He sat. She didn't. I have chronic kidney disease, she said plainly. Stage 4. It's been like this for 2 years. Some weeks are better, some aren't. I freelance from home when I can. Virtual admin stuff, but that doesn't cover everything. Elias nodded slowly. No one else helps. My sister did, but she moved out of state last year after her own divorce. The silence stretched between them. Raina finally sat down across from him, folding her hands tightly. I told them to stop. Noah and Elena. I told them a dozen times. But when you can't pay for heat, and they see you cry at night, kids, they do things they shouldn't have to do. Her voice cracked slightly. Just once, she cleared her throat. You think I'm a bad mom? No, Elias said, and he meant it. I think you're tired and alone and trying harder than anyone should ever have to. That silence returned again, this time gentler. I didn't come here to judge you, he added. And I'm not here to offer charity that makes you feel small. Then why are you here? Elias looked around the room once more, at the tiny coats hanging by the door, at the 2 sets of mismatched shoes, at the picture taped above the heater of a rainbow, and a stick figure in a red beanie. He looked back at her and said, "Because when they handed me that bag tonight, they looked at me like they'd seen grown-ups disappear before, and I didn't want to be one more." Rena didn't say anything. She stared at him for a moment, then blinked and looked down. "I'm making tea," she murmured. "You want some?" "Yes," Elias said softly. "I think I do." The tea was lukewarm, not from neglect, but because the kettle itself was old and slow, whistling softly only after several minutes of effort. Rena poured 2 mismatched mugs, careful with her movements, as if each action cost her something. Elias sat quietly at the table, watching, not studying her the way executives studied competitors, but the way someone might watch waves from a distant shore, cautious, unsure if they should step in, but unable to look away. She handed him a mug and sat down again across from him. There was a pause. He sipped the tea. It tasted like mint, with a hint of something floral underneath. Not strong, not sweet, just warm. "My daughter drew that," Rena said suddenly, gesturing toward the rainbow drawing taped by the heater. "She says it's us, the 3 of us. I asked her once why the rainbow only had 4 colors instead of 7. She said, 'Because I ran out of markers, but it's still happy.'" Elias smiled faintly. "She's 6'6", going on 16, Rena said with a tired chuckle. "Noah's the quiet one. She's the chaos." She rubbed her eyes, and for a brief moment, Elias caught the tremble in her fingers. Her strength was real, but it was also held together by tape and willpower. "You really didn't have to come here," she said. "Softer now." "I know," Elias replied, but I couldn't stop thinking about them. The coats, their hands, the fact that they thanked me even when I didn't say anything kind. They're good kids. I can see that. Rena looked away. "I didn't mean for them to grow up this fast." She whispered, "I used to read them books every night, homemade pancakes every Sunday. I used to sing in the kitchen like an idiot while folding laundry. That was before the dialysis started taking all my energy." A silence fell between them again. Not awkward, just full. Elias didn't interrupt. Instead, he let her speak, let her memory fill the room. "They think they're helping me," she said. "And in a way, they are. Those few extra dollars, they matter. But it terrifies me that they think it's their job now to fix what's broken." Elias stared at his mug. Steam still curled from its edge. Lazy and unhurried. "I lost my daughter 5 years ago," he said, the words almost too soft to hear. Rena looked up. Drunk driver. Crossed a light. Killed her and her mother in seconds. I was across the country, closing a deal in San Francisco. Got the call in a hotel elevator. Never got to say goodbye. He didn't say this often, hardly ever. But it came out now, like a page turning on its own. I shut everything down after that. He continued. Not the company, of course. That kept growing, but me. I haven't really felt much in years. Rena didn't reach for him, didn't say she was sorry. She just nodded. Her eyes clouded with something both familiar and deeply respectful. Then 2 kids in red beanies knocked on your door, she said. Yeah. And something cracked. He nodded once. Rena stood slowly, stretching her legs. She winced slightly, her hands instinctively going to her lower back. Elias noticed. You okay? It's always worse at night, she said. The pain doesn't wait for a schedule. You said dialysis 3 times a week at the clinic. I walk there when I can. It's only 6 blocks. but some days it feels like a mile. He stood as well. "Is there anything you need?" he asked. She looked at him hard, not with anger, not with suspicion, just with the practiced wariness of someone who had learned to mistrust kindness that arrived too late. "I don't want a savior," she said. "I want to raise my kids without collapsing in front of them. I want enough heat in the winter and enough food in the fridge that they don't pretend they're full just to leave more for me. Can you give me that without making me feel small?" Elias didn't blink. "Yes," he said. "I think I can." She studied him, a long pause. Then, "Okay." He turned to leave, slowly, careful not to disturb the peace that had settled. At the door, she called out, "Mr. Monroe." He paused. "Noah made a drawing of you," she said, after they got back. He said. He had a nice voice, like a teacher, but sad. Elias smiled faintly. "He's observant." She nodded. "He is." He left the apartment with a strange heaviness in his chest, one he didn't want to shake off. The night air bit harder now. The wind felt less distant. He walked slowly back to his car, his hands deep in his coat pockets. Somewhere between the cracked stairwell and the fading mural on the brick wall outside. Elias knew this wasn't going to be a one-time visit. Not for them, and not for him. The next day was a Wednesday. Elias didn't go to the gym, didn't open his inbox. He stared at the ceiling of his penthouse for 20 minutes after waking, listening to the dull hum of the city muffled beneath layers of glass and luxury. His assistant texted twice about an executive roundtable. He didn't respond. Instead, he pulled on jeans and a navy coat, the kind he hadn't worn in months, the kind with sleeves that still smelled faintly of sawdust from an old garage project that had once kept his hands too busy to grieve. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He just went. The grocery store he chose wasn't the organic boutique he usually ordered from. This one sat on the edge of South Belmont, wedged between a laundromat and a shuttered bookstore. The carts had rust on the wheels. The freezer buzzed louder than the fluorescent lights above. Elias moved down the aisles like he was building a care package, not a meal. Oatmeal, lentils, fresh fruit, a modest cut of beef. He paused in the children's section and picked out 2 packs of colored pencils, one with pastel tones, the other neon bright. He hesitated at the register, unsure whether this was kind or condescending. Raina had been clear no pity, but kids needed food. They needed color, and something in him needed to give them both. The cashier barely looked up as she rang him through. "Paper or plastic paper," he said. He carried the bags himself. 3 blocks, up the stairs. He didn't buzz this time, just knocked. When Raina opened the door, she was holding a book in one hand and a dish rag in the other. Her eyes landed on the bags, then flicked to his face. "Elias," she said carefully. "Just groceries." He said, "That's all." She didn't reach for them. "I told you I know what you told me, and I'm still listening. I just thought maybe I could help without conditions." Raina exhaled through her nose, long and tired, then stepped aside. "Fine," she said. "But you stay for lunch. That's the deal." Elias gave a small nod, entered, and set the bags on the counter. Noah and Elena sat cross-legged on the floor, coloring pages spread out like tiles across the wood. Noah looked up first. "Mr. Eli," he said, surprised. Elena perked up. "You came back," Elias smiled, crouching down beside them. "I brought new colors." Elena gasped and grabbed the pastel box. "These are fancy Noah, ever quiet," simply slid the old, broken crayons aside, and opened the neon set. His eyes lit up, just a little. Raina watched from the kitchen, arms folded. Elias could feel her eyes, not angry, not quite comfortable either, just watchful. He stood and began unpacking the food. "You like lentil soup?" he asked. "I like what I can cook," Raina said. "We make it stretch." "I got extra onions," he said. "My mom used to say they make everything taste like home." Raina gave a half smile and took the bag from him. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. Lunch was simple. Raina reheated leftover rice, added the beef and a splash of broth, and cracked an egg into the pot. The apartment filled with warmth, not just from the heater, but from the smell of food that belonged. They ate at the table. Noah ate slowly, like he was rationing each bite. Elena chattered about a neighborhood cat she named Noodle, who liked to sit on their windowsill. Elias listened, not pretending to be someone he wasn't just present. After lunch, Raina cleared the dishes. Elias offered to help. She shook her head. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I know," he replied, "but I want to." That seemed to unsettle her more than anything else. "Why?" she asked. He hesitated, then glanced at the window, where a tiny rainbow sticker caught the light. "Because your kids reminded me what it's like to feel seen." Raina stared at him for a beat, then turned back to the sink. Later, while the kids napped in their shared bed, Elena curled up like a kitten. Noah stretched out flat with one arm over his eyes. Raina poured 2 more mugs of tea, this time stronger, with a drop of honey. "Tell me something real," she said, sliding his cup over. Elias raised an eyebrow. "I thought I already did. Tell me why someone like you is here," she said, "really here." Elias stared into his cup. He thought about the photo on his nightstand he hadn't looked at in months. His daughter's crayon drawings. The sound of a voicemail he still couldn't delete. "I think I forgot what it feels like to matter to someone outside of numbers and headlines," he said. Raina didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was soft. "Well, I can't offer much, but if you're looking for something honest, this place has more of that than most penthouses." Elias smiled faintly. "I believe you." As he stood to leave that afternoon, Noah stirred on the bed and opened one eye. "You coming back?" he asked groggily. Elias looked at Raina. She didn't smile, but she didn't stop him either. "If it's okay," Elias said. Noah nodded. "Yeah, okay." He left with his hands empty, but for the first time in a very long time, his heart didn't feel that way. By the end of that week, they had started calling him Mr. Eli. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Elena said it first, without ceremony. One afternoon, as she held up a drawing of him riding a purple whale, her imagination always 2 steps ahead of reality, she pointed and said, "That's you, Mr. Eli. See, I gave you sunglasses." He had chuckled, said, "I like the whale," and that was that. Noah, more reserved, followed a few days later, half mumbled, but intentional, "Mr. Eli, can you help me fix the zipper?" Elias had looked up from the kitchen floor, where he was reassembling a crooked chair leg, and simply nodded. The name stuck. It softened him. They started saving stories to tell him, waiting for him by the window when the sun dipped low enough that shadows stretched long across the floor. Elena once asked Raina, "Is he coming today?" like she was asking if spring would return. Raina pretended not to notice the change at first. She still moved with guarded efficiency, still declined most of his offers with a sharp shake of her head or a flat, "I've got it." But now she poured him tea without asking. Now she laughed, occasionally soft, surprised bursts that sounded like they belonged to someone younger, someone less tired. Elias never overstayed. He brought groceries twice that week, once with bananas so ripe the whole apartment smelled like baking. He fixed the squeaky cabinet hinge, replaced the light bulb near the bathroom. Once, he brought a thick blanket and draped it over the heater at night so the warmth would last longer. He never made a speech about it, never offered pity. He just did what needed doing. But his presence, even quiet, began to ripple elsewhere. On Thursday, he missed a senior team sync at Brightcode. His calendar had been full investor prep call, internal performance review, and a quarterly budget brief. Instead, he was helping Noah with a math sheet on the kitchen table. 10 minutes into the exercise, Elena spilled juice all over her sketchbook and burst into frustrated tears. Elias reached for a towel without thinking, wiped up the mess, and told her it was okay. We'll draw another one, maybe one with a rainbow octopus this time. She looked up at him, teary but curious. Can it have a hat? Absolutely, he said. When he finally returned to the office late that evening, his phone buzzed with 4 unread messages and an email flagged, urgent. Where were you today? Are you all right? Boards asking questions. Please respond before end of day. He didn't. He stared at his desk. The polished wood reflected his face like a mirror, one he barely recognized anymore. The skyline outside his office window looked hollow now, like a beautiful cage. He used to feel powerful here, untouchable. Now it just felt far away. On Friday, he attended only one meeting, a product roadmap review. He didn't talk much, just listened. His mind wandered. What was Noah doing at that moment? Did Raina need help with her prescription refill? Did Elena finish her octopus? He texted Raina once. Just a simple need anything. She replied an hour later. We're okay. Elena wants to show you her new comic book. You're the superhero. He stared at the screen longer than he meant to. Superhero. That word used to feel ridiculous. Now it felt humbling. That weekend, he arrived early. Too early, maybe, but the kids didn't mind. They raced down the hall when they heard his knock, nearly bowling him over with hugs and backpacks full of art projects. Raina stood behind them, half smiling, one eyebrow raised. You planning to adopt us or something? Elias raised both hands. Just passing through. You've been passing through a lot lately. I take my time, he said. She gave him a look, then stepped aside to let him in. Lunch was a mash of leftovers and peanut butter toast. The kids shared every crumb of their week. Elena insisted he read aloud from her comic book, but you have to do the voices. Mr. Eli, he obliged. Noah laughed. Raina chuckled into her tea. That night, Elias returned home to his penthouse. The elevator felt too quiet, the echo of his shoes too loud. He sat on the edge of his bed with his suit jacket still on, staring at the wall. Something had shifted, and for the first time in years, he wasn't sure which life felt more like his anymore. Meanwhile, miles away, in a sleek conference room lit by recessed lighting and scented wood panels, a different kind of conversation was unfolding. I'm telling you, said Miriam Cho, Brightcode's CFO. He's not just distracted, he's off radar. A board member leaned forward, missed 2 key meetings, delegated his own earnings call notes, canceled the Zurich investor trip. Another added, there's speculation. A mid-level engineer spotted him in South Belmont. That's not exactly our demo. Murmurs followed. One person, quieter than the rest, finally said, Elias Monroe doesn't slip. If he's somewhere, There's a reason. Let's find out what it is. They didn't know it yet, but their CEO had started walking away from the world they built quietly, one afternoon at a time. That night, back in 7B, Elena taped her drawing to the fridge. It showed a tall man with glasses holding hands with two kids and standing next to a woman in a green sweater. A speech bubble above him read, "Let's go get ice cream." In the corner, written in colorful block letters, Mr. Eli and us. The first time Raina saw her name on a screen that wasn't medical or billing, it was on Elias's phone. She had just handed him a cup of tea. The kids were still laughing in the next room, something about a fart joke and a drawing of a superhero with toilet paper for a cape. Light danced through the apartment from the open curtains. For once, the heater worked without rattling. Then the phone lit up. Elias didn't hide it, but he didn't move quickly either. The screen showed a notification banner. Bright Code CEO missing major meetings, is he in love? Or in trouble tech scope daily underneath the title. A blurry photo of Elias stepping out of his car. The background was unmistakable brick walls, peeling paint, a third-floor fire escape. Her fire escape. Raina set down the tea without drinking it. Elias muted the phone. "They don't have names," he said quietly. "Just innuendo." "They don't need names," she replied. Her voice didn't shake, but her hands did. "Anyone who lives around here will recognize that door." "Elena's not in the photo," he said. "That's not the point." The next hour passed like winter coming in through a cracked window, quiet but cold. The kids didn't notice. They ran through the hallway chasing a balloon that kept bouncing off the ceiling. But Raina moved slower, more carefully, as if each step had to be deliberate now. Each gesture weighed for risk. "Raina," Elias began. "Did you think this wouldn't happen?" she cut in. "You're a public figure. Eli, this isn't a game. They will twist everything." He tried to explain. He told her how the article came from an anonymous source, that someone from the board must have leaked information, that this was a power move, a distraction from their own failures. She stared at him, arms folded. "And me?" she asked. "What am I in this story? The fragile single mom, the poor charity case who caught the rich man's heart." "You're not a case," he said. "You're a person. You're a mother who holds her family together with sheer will. You're the reason I stopped feeling numb." "That's a beautiful sentiment," she said. "But it doesn't feed my kids when people stop delivering to this address because of rumors. It doesn't protect them when the neighbors start whispering." The kettle hissed on the stove. Neither of them moved to turn it off. That night, after the kids fell asleep, Elena curled beside her stuffed turtle. Noah with a book still in his hand, Raina sat at the table, staring at her phone. Not reading, just holding it. Elias sat across from her, silent. "I can't be the reason you fall apart," she said. "You're not," he answered. "You're the reason I'm finally coming together. You don't need us." "I do." "Then prove it," she said. "Don't disappear tomorrow when the board corners you." He looked at her, and for the first time, there was something harder in her eyes. Not rejection, not fear, something like a dare. "Tell the truth," she added, "all of it, or walk away before they drag us down too." He didn't reply that night. He stayed until the tea grew cold, then kissed the top of Elena's head as she slept and slipped out into the dark. The next morning, Elias walked into Bright Code headquarters with a different posture. He wore his signature tailored black suit, the one everyone recognized. But today, there was no tie, no script in his hand, no coffee in the other. When he stepped into the glass-walled conference room, voices dropped. The quarterly shareholder meeting was already underway. Cameras in the back, Notepads out, board members lined in their usual seats, eyes sharp. Miriam Cho was mid-sentence, a graph flickering behind her. When she saw Elias, she faltered slightly, then stepped aside. He nodded once and walked to the front of the room. No slides, no data points, just Elias, and the weight of a week that had shifted everything. He looked around the room, met the gaze of each face. Then he spoke. "You've heard things," he began. "Some are exaggerated, some are true, but let me be clear. I missed meetings. I prioritized something else, something more human than Q3 projections." A murmur. Then stillness. "I didn't plan it," he continued. "I didn't expect to open my door and find 2 kids delivering dinner. I didn't expect to care, but I did. And when I found out why, when I met their mother, saw her fight to keep them fed and warm while her body failed her, I couldn't walk away." He paused. "This isn't a scandal. It's a story about choosing to stay." Another pause. "I understand the optics, but I won't apologize for doing the right thing." The room didn't erupt, but something shifted. One board member looked down, embarrassed. Another, an older man with thick glasses, nodded slowly. Elias stepped back. "Bright Code will survive without me, but I won't survive if I go back to who I was before them." He walked out, not in shame, in peace. Later that evening, back in Raina's kitchen, Elena wrapped her arms around his leg and asked, "Did they yell at you?" "No," he said, crouching to her height. They listened. "Are we still your secret?" she asked. Elias looked over her head at Raina, who stood holding a towel, unmoving. "No," he said. "You're my truth now." The morning it happened. The sunlight was soft, lazy even. It crawled across the hardwood floor like it had all the time in the world. Raina didn't. She had insisted on walking Noah and Elena to school herself. "Just to the corner," she told Elias. "They like it when I'm there." He had offered, twice. She waved him off both times, saying, "You don't need to be everywhere. They still need to know I'm their mom." He stood at the window after they left, watching from the 3rd-floor apartment as her figure moved slowly across the sidewalk. Noah walked ahead, backpack bouncing. Elena skipped beside Raina, holding her hand, chattering the way 6-year-olds do when mornings still feel magical. But halfway down the block, Elias saw Raina hesitate. 1 step, 2. She stopped, stumbled, and then she was down. Elias didn't remember grabbing his coat, didn't feel the cold sidewalk under his shoes. He only remembered the thud of his heart as he sprinted toward her, ignoring the stares of pedestrians, the sound of his own name called by someone behind him. When he reached her, she was conscious but barely. Her breathing was shallow, her skin pale. Sweat clung to her forehead despite the winter chill. "Raina," he said urgently, kneeling beside her. "Talk to me. Look at me." She blinked, dizzy. She whispered. It just hit too fast. Noah hovered behind her, wide-eyed. Elena was crying. Elias gathered Raina in his arms. She weighed nothing, just bones and breath and a mother's stubborn pride. He didn't wait for an ambulance. He carried her to his car and drove straight to the private hospital where his name still meant something. By noon, Raina was admitted. By 3 p.m., a nephrologist stood at Elias's side, frowning over test results. Stage 4, nearing 5, the doctor said. She's been functioning on borrowed time. Her potassium levels are unstable, and she's severely anemic. She needs a transplant, Elias said flatly. Yes, the doctor replied. Sooner than later. She can't keep standing like this. It's a miracle she hasn't collapsed sooner. Elias closed his eyes. And the list. The doctor exhaled. 18 months minimum, even with priority status. 2 years is more likely. That night, Raina lay in a hospital bed, too tired to sit up, her fingers tangled in the blanket as if trying to hold on to something steady. Elias sat beside her, elbows on his knees, silent. "I didn't want them to see me like that," she murmured. "They didn't care," he said. "They just wanted you safe." "I can't keep doing this," she said. "I can't keep being their world if my body keeps giving up on me." "You don't have to do it alone." She turned her head slowly to look at him. Her eyes were ringed with exhaustion, but behind them still burned something fierce, something that refused to surrender to pity. "I'm not a project," she said. "I know. And I'm not here so you can feel useful. I know that too." Then why, she asked. He leaned back, rubbing his face. Then he looked her dead in the eye. "Because I care. Not like a headline, not like a fantasy. I care like someone who needs you to stay alive. For them, for yourself, for me." She looked away. After a while, she said, "You shouldn't have to carry this." "Then let me carry part of it," he said. "Just part." The next day, while Raina slept, Elias drove back to the same hospital and walked into the lab department. He didn't bring an assistant, didn't alert the press, just walked in with a folded document and a quiet voice. "I want to get tested as a kidney donor," he said. "Privately?" The technician raised an eyebrow. "For a family member, no." Elias said, "Not yet." They drew his blood, took his vitals, and told him it would take a few days. He nodded. "No contact. Just call me directly when it's in." That evening, he returned to the apartment. Noah answered the door. His face lit up, then fell. "Is she okay?" "She's resting," Elias said gently. "She'll be home soon." "Did she faint because we used up all the food money?" Elena asked quietly from the kitchen. Elias felt something snap in his chest. "No," he said, walking inside. "She fainted because she's been fighting too hard for too long." "Will she die?" Noah asked, staring down at the floor. "No," Elias said. "We're going to help her, all of us." He didn't have all the answers yet, but he had one. He wasn't leaving. Not now. Not ever. That night, he sat on the edge of Raina's hospital bed. She was half asleep, her voice barely a whisper. "I hate this," she murmured. "I hate needing people." "You don't need anyone," he said softly. "But you deserve to be held up when you can't stand." She didn't reply, but her hand moved across the blanket, and he took it. The first time Raina cried in front of Elias. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even during a moment of pain. It happened in silence. The hospital room was quiet, lit by the soft amber of a bedside lamp. Outside the window, the city pulsed like a heartbeat, distant, constant, uncaring. Inside, the air was still. No monitors beeped. No nurses entered. Raina was sitting up for the first time in 2 days, wrapped in a robe Elias had brought from her apartment. Her hair was tied back loosely. Her voice had returned in fragments, enough for short sentences. Elias sat beside her, legs crossed, holding a cup of tea. She sipped hers slowly, then set it down. Her fingers traced the rim of the cup as if it were the only solid thing in the room. "Do you know how many times people have passed by me?" she asked quietly. "In the grocery store, in the clinic waiting room, on the street." He looked at her, waiting. "They never stop," she said. "They glance. Sometimes they even smile, but they don't ask. They don't knock. Not really." She turned to him. "But you did." He didn't speak. He just listened. And I've spent every day since then wondering why. She continued, why someone like you, rich, clean, important, walked into a place like mine and didn't flinch. I did flinch, he admitted. I just didn't walk away. Raina's eyes filled, but she blinked quickly. That's worse, she whispered, because now I want to believe it's real. And that terrifies me. Why? Because if I believe in you, and you leave. She trailed off. He leaned forward. I'm not leaving. She shook her head. Everyone says that. And then they go. Elias reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded paper. He laid it gently on the tray in front of her. The hospital seal caught the light. What's this? My test results, he said. She stared at it, didn't touch it. I'm a match, he added softly. Blood type, markers, compatible for direct donation. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked down at the paper, then back at him. You got tested. Yes, when 3 days ago. You did it without telling me. I didn't want to push you. I just needed to know if I could help. She finally picked up the paper. Her hands shook. You can't just give me a kidney like you're buying me groceries. I'm not, he said gently. I'm giving you time. Time to raise your kids. Time to laugh without coughing. Time to draw rainbows with 7 colors instead of 4. Her eyes brimmed again. You can't fix everything, she whispered. I'm not trying to. Then why, she asked, voice cracking. Elias hesitated, then said, because when I lost my family, I stopped believing that love survives hardship. And then you showed me what surviving actually looks like. She covered her mouth with one hand. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I've spent the last 2 years preparing to leave them, quietly, slowly. Now I'm supposed to just turn that off. No, he said. You don't have to turn it off. Just make room for something else. Make room for hope. A tear slipped down her cheek. I'm tired of being brave, she said. Then let me be brave for you, he replied. The next day, the transplant coordinator came in with forms and questions. Raina didn't sign anything. Not yet. That night, Elias stayed late again. They talked for hours, not about the surgery, but about their kids. Raina told him Noah still slept with a flashlight under the covers in case he needed to save the day, that Elena once made a sculpture out of cereal and glue and cried when it broke. Elias told her about his daughter's love for rubber duckies and how she used to line them up on the windowsill during storms so they could watch the rain too. By midnight, Raina was half asleep, her hand in his. I want to live, she said. The words came so softly, they almost disappeared into the quiet. I want to be here, for them, for myself, for us. Elias didn't say anything. He just squeezed her hand and stayed. Back at the apartment, Noah drew a picture of 4 stick figures, one taller than the rest, wearing glasses. Underneath, in block letters, he wrote, Don't worry, Mom, Mr. Eli Strong. They didn't speak much the day before the surgery. Not because they had nothing to say, because they had too much. Raina sat on the edge of her hospital bed, fingers folded tightly in her lap. The kids had been picked up by Lydia, the neighbor from down the hall who had become more family than friend. Elias was in the chair near the window, watching the city fold into itself as dusk slid over the skyline. Between them was a silence thick with memory, fear, and something new trust, maybe, or something even scarier, peace. You don't have to do this, Raina said, barely louder than the hum of the heater. I know. She looked over. Really, you can walk away, and I'd still thank you for everything you've done. He didn't move, just stared out the window. I'm not here because I owe you, he said. I'm here because I choose to be. But if something happens to you, then I'll know I did the right thing. She stood, slowly, carefully, her body still aching, fragile in a way that made her angry. I've spent my whole life proving I don't need anyone, she said, and now I'm terrified that I do. Elias turned to her. That's not weakness, he said. That's humanity. Raina closed her eyes. You'll go under anesthesia. Let them take something out of you. For me, how do I say yes to that? He rose, stepped closer. You don't owe me anything, he said. Not gratitude, not promises, just your life. That's all I want. She smiled, just barely. That's a pretty big ask. It's the only one I have. That night, Elias returned home to his penthouse to pack an overnight bag. It felt sterile, soulless. He stood in his kitchen and stared at the wine glasses in a neat row, untouched in months. On the fridge was a magnet his daughter had once made, a lopsided rainbow with 3 glued-on buttons for clouds. He hadn't thrown it away. Couldn't now, though. It looked less like grief and more like a doorway. He picked up a pen and began writing. 1 letter for Raina, 1 for Noah, 1 for Elena. He wasn't planning to die. But some things needed to be said anyway. He told Raina she had been his reminder that stillness isn't the same as peace, and that her strength had retaught him how to feel. He told Noah that silence wasn't weakness, and that watching over his sister made him braver than most grown men Elias had known. He told Elena to keep drawing whales with sunglasses and to never forget that wild imagination could change the world. He folded the letters carefully and placed them in a manila envelope labeled "Only if Needed." At 6:45 a.m., the hospital lights buzzed overhead as 2 nurses wheeled him into pre-op. Raina was already prepped in a different room. They wouldn't see each other until after. Still, he asked the nurse, "Can I leave something for her?" A nod, a clipboard. He scrawled a single line on a blank page and asked that it be taped to her IV stand before she woke. The nurse read it silently, then smiled and nodded. She understood. The surgery began at 8:12 a.m. 2 operating rooms, 2 surgeons, a web of wires and machines connecting one story to another. The transplant went smoothly. No complications. No delays. When Raina woke, her throat was dry and her body felt foreign, but the pain was different now. Dull, yes, but no longer heavy with decay. She blinked through the haze of medication and turned her head. The nurse was there, adjusting her IV. On the stand was the note, just 5 words, "I'll be right here." She cried, then, not like a storm, like a release. 3 floors up. Elias was awake too, pale, exhausted, sore. But when the doctor told him, it was a textbook operation. He closed his eyes and nodded. Textbooks didn't hold feelings, but today they held lives. 2 days later, they saw each other for the first time. Raina was in a wheelchair, wrapped in the same soft robe. Elias was sitting up, his skin still too pale, but his eyes alert. "You look terrible," she said. "You look slightly better than I do," he replied. She reached out, hand trembling, and took his. "I don't have words," she said. "You don't need them," he replied, and together, in a room full of machines and stitched seams, they sat in silence again. This time, not from fear, but from something that sounded like future. At home, Elena drew a new picture. This one showed 2 stick figures in hospital beds, each with smiling faces and matching bandages. At the top, in bold marker letters, she wrote, "Fixing people is love. Recovery didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments. For Raina." It was the first morning she sat up without her body trembling. The first time she showered alone. The first breath that didn't feel like it came at a cost. For Elias, it was the first time he laughed again, really laughed when Elena tried to braid his hair and whispered, "You look like a sleepy lion." They both bore scars now, but instead of hiding them, they began to wear them like reminders, like bookmarks in a story neither of them had expected to survive, much less rewrite. Raina came home 3 days after Elias. Noah met her at the door, hugging her with the kind of desperation that only children understand. Elena cried for a full 5 minutes, then started talking without stopping about a dog she saw, a math problem she didn't understand, the dream she had where Mr. Eli was flying but also making pancakes. Raina listened to all of it. Then, when they had both gone to their room, she sat on the couch and stared at the wall. The apartment was still small. The paint still peeled near the windows. The heater still groaned, but something had changed. There was color now. A blanket Elias had bought. A set of colored pencils spread across the table. A coat hook he'd mounted next to the door, low enough for little arms. And something inside her, something she thought had died, began to flicker back to life. Elias didn't go back to work right away. Bright Code sent emails. His assistant called. A reporter camped out in front of his building for 2 days. He ignored them all. Instead, he moved slowly, gently. He took short walks with Raina to the corner store. He helped Noah with science homework, answering questions about volcanoes, and then building a papier-mâché model that exploded far more impressively than intended. He sat with Elena, while she colored half of her drawings, now included him, sometimes flying, sometimes baking, always smiling. One afternoon, he brought over a folder. Inside were blueprints, notes, hand-drawn sketches. He slid it across the table to Raina. "What's this?" she asked, unfolding the pages. "A project," he said, "for us." She flipped through, eyes scanning each page slowly. A modest building, 2 stories, brick and glass, a welcome center, childcare space, medical consultation room, a kitchen, a learning hub. At the top of one page, the Haven Center. Raina looked up. "You built this, I dreamed it," Elias said. "But I want you to build it, direct it, make it yours." Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the paper. "This is a lot. It's not a gift," he said. "It's a beginning. For families like yours. For the people no one knocks for." She set the folder down. "You trust me with this. I trust you with everything," he said. That night, they sat side by side on the couch, listening to the kids snore from the bedroom. A soft fan hummed in the background. Outside, wind tapped against the glass in gentle rhythms. Raina turned to him. "You don't talk about your daughter much." Elias nodded. "Some days I feel like she's still 4 years old in my mind, like time just stopped with her. You think she'd like this version of you, I think," he said. "She'd tell me I was late, but finally got it right." Raina smiled, then leaned her head on his shoulder. No declarations. No need to define anything. Just presence. Just breath. Just the kind of peace that doesn't announce itself, but stays. A week later, Elias returned to his penthouse. It looked the same, but it didn't feel like his life anymore. He stood by the window and looked out at the skyline, the same buildings that once represented everything he thought mattered. Now, they just looked tall, not meaningful, just tall. He packed a few bags, donated his suits, called his lawyer, and arranged a long leave of absence from the board. When they asked why, he simply said, "Because I want to be present where I'm needed, and that's not here." He didn't owe them an explanation. 2 days later, he moved into a smaller apartment a few blocks from Raina. Not because she asked, not because he needed to, but because home had changed zip codes. On the second Saturday after the move, they made pancakes together. Raina stirred the batter. Elias flipped them with lopsided grace. The kids decorated the table with napkin art and a milk carton centerpiece that said, "We are okay now." Elias took a bite and laughed. "Too much cinnamon." Raina smirked. "Blame Elena." Elena beamed. "I wanted it to taste like Christmas." "It does," Elias said. "Exactly that." And for a long moment, no one said anything, because they didn't have to. Later that afternoon, Raina found Elias sitting alone on the fire escape, watching clouds drift. She brought him a mug of tea and sat beside him. "You sure about all this?" she asked. "About what us, the center, the staying?" He looked at her. "I've never been more sure of anything," he said, "because for the first time, I'm not doing this to escape anything. I'm doing it to build something that matters." She nodded slowly, then whispered, "Okay, let's build it." The ribbon-cutting ceremony was small by design. No news vans, no podium, no press release, just folding chairs, fresh paint, and a borrowed mic crackling with old feedback. The building stood humbly at the corner of Glendale and 3rd Right, where the old laundromat used to be. Its bricks were warm red, the windows wide and low so kids could press their faces to the glass without needing to tiptoe. Above the door, hand-painted in soft letters, "The Haven Center for all who never got a knock." Raina stood just inside the entrance, smoothing the wrinkles from her second-hand blazer. Elena clung to her hand, dressed in a pink skirt covered with marker doodles. Noah stood quietly behind them, proud and serious. Elias arrived late, not dramatically so, just enough to remind people that the day didn't belong to him. He wore a gray sweater, no suit, no tie, just eyes that scanned the building like it was a newborn child he couldn't believe had made it this far. When Raina saw him, her breath caught in her chest. They'd spent the last month planning this. They'd argued over paint colors, laughed while assembling chairs, nearly broke a table trying to fit it through a door that refused to cooperate. But seeing him walk in, seeing the light in his face, it was real now, not a dream. A home. The crowd wasn't large, but it was right. The Rodriguez family from down the block brought homemade bread. Lydia brought lemonade and 5 folding chairs. A woman from the shelter Raina used to visit arrived in scrubs, cheeks flushed with pride. 2 teens from the next building brought a mural. They'd painted a swirl of hands and stars and 1 small note in the corner. "This place is a chance." Noah stood near the refreshments table and passed out napkins like a maître d'. Elena gave out hugs to everyone who complimented her dress. And when Raina stepped to the mic, something inside her steadied. "I used to believe," she began, "that dignity came from doing it all alone." A pause. The crowd hushed. "I thought asking for help meant I was failing, that needing others made me weak. But then life knocked me down, and someone knocked back." She looked at Elias. He didn't offer rescue. He offered presence. He didn't fix me. He stayed with me while I rebuilt myself. Her voice trembled. She took a breath. This center is not a charity. It's not a rescue. It's a space for rebuilding, for reminding people they are not invisible, not inconvenient, not forgotten. A long silence. Then applause, not loud, but honest. The kind that said, "We see you now." Afterward, people wandered through the new rooms, a tiny kitchen stocked with donated canned goods and a crock pot, a library corner with secondhand books and mismatched bean bags, a calm room with soft lights and recorded bedtime stories for kids who didn't have quiet homes. A chalkboard near the entrance asked, "What do you wish someone had given you when you were struggling?" People filled it in. Time to cry without shame. A ride to the doctor. Food without questions. Someone to say, "I believe you." That night, long after the last guest had gone, Elias and Raina stood in the entryway, staring at the mural. "It feels alive," Elias said. Raina nodded. "Because it is." Elena was asleep in the corner, curled up on a beanbag, hugging a crayon box like a teddy bear. Noah leaned against the wall, half reading a science magazine someone had left behind. "They'll grow up remembering this," Raina whispered. "They'll grow up knowing that building love is more radical than just surviving it," Elias replied. She smiled. "You always talk like a philosopher when you're tired. I'm always tired now," he said with a grin. Raina leaned against him. "Good. Stay that way. Stay here. I'm not going anywhere." Later that week, they started their first classes. Raina led parenting workshops, low pressure, no judgment spaces where moms and dads confess things no one ever asked them about. Elias started a mentorship group for teenagers, teaching them about business, storytelling, coding, and how to find their voice before someone else wrote their future. One girl asked him, "Weren't you, like, super rich? I still am." He replied. She narrowed her eyes. "Why are you here then?" He looked out the window at Rena playing a clapping game with Elena and 2 other kids. "Because here is where the value is," he said. One afternoon, Rena received a letter. It was from the hospital, a note of thanks, a request to come speak. Her story had reached someone high up. She placed the letter on the table and looked at Elias. "I'm not used to being asked," she said. He nodded. "You're allowed to say yes now." That night, over lentil soup and banana bread, Elena asked, "Is this forever?" Raina and Elias exchanged a glance. Then Elias answered, "As long as we're breathing, it is." The knock came just after sundown. Not urgent, not loud, just familiar. Elias looked up from the couch, where he and Noah were, halfway through assembling a puzzle of the solar system. Raina was in the kitchen, helping Elena peel carrots, humming a tune that none of them recognized, but all had grown to love. The knock came again. This time, Elena perked up. That's not Lydia's knock. Raina wiped her hands, eyes narrowing slightly. Elias stood and opened the door. 2 kids stood on the other side, a boy and a girl, maybe 10, maybe younger. Their hair was damp from the cold, their shoes too big, their eyes wide but wary. "Hi," the girl said. "We're supposed to bring this to Mr. Eli." She held out a paper bag. Inside was a wrapped sandwich, a small juice box, and a note in messy cursive from the shelter on 9th. The kid asked for the man who helps. Elias knelt down. "Where's your grown-up?" he asked gently. "Our mom's inside," the boy said. "She's sick. But the lady in the building said we could come, said you helped people." Raina had come to the door now. She didn't say anything, just stood behind Elias, one hand resting on the doorframe, the other still smelling faintly of carrots and soap. Elias looked over his shoulder at her. She nodded once. He turned back to the kids and smiled. "Well," he said, "you knocked on the right door." They didn't send the kids away. They brought them in, made tea, found crackers and peanut butter, called the shelter to confirm things, and arranged for a staffer from Haven to meet the family that evening. Elena offered her stuffed bear for comfort. Noah showed them the puzzle. Raina pulled out her stethoscope, an old habit she hadn't fully given up, and checked the girl's pulse. Steady and strong. By the time the Haven staffer arrived, the children were laughing. Elias handed her the paper bag with the sandwich. "Tell them we'll come by tomorrow and that she can rest. We've got this." The staffer nodded. "You always do." After the door closed, Raina stood quietly in the hallway. Elias stepped beside her. "You okay?" She nodded, then said, almost inaudibly, "That used to be me." He took her hand. "I know. I used to be the girl no one remembered, the one holding on to dignity like it was breakable. You made it unbreakable." Raina exhaled. "And now, we're the ones people knock for." "Yes," Elias said, "because we never closed the door." That weekend, they painted a new sign above the Haven Center's front entrance. It was Elena's idea. She insisted on bright colors and glitter, though the glitter didn't stick very well. But the message was clear, bold, and written in block letters. "This door stays open." Months passed. Seasons shifted. Brightcode eventually released a carefully worded press statement. Elias Monroe has stepped away to pursue philanthropic work and deepen his commitment to community wellness. They offered him a legacy award. He declined. He didn't need statues. He had mornings now. Mornings with Raina, coffee mugs warm between them, mornings with Noah, who asked sharper questions with every passing week, mornings with Elena, who started a storybook project titled "How the CEO Gave His Kidney and Found a Family." They asked her if it was fiction. She said, "It's realer than most things." One afternoon, Elias received a letter from the hospital that once treated Raina. A young surgeon had read their story and applied for a fellowship in underfunded neighborhoods. He wrote, "I didn't know people like you existed. Now I want to be someone like that too." Elias folded the letter and placed it on the windowsill next to the old magnet rainbow his daughter once made. He looked out the window, sunlight flickering on a city that no longer looked like a cage. Now it looked like home. That evening, as twilight rolled in and the world slowed again, Elias sat with Raina on the fire escape. Below, the streetlights hummed to life. Above, the sky shifted from gold to ash to navy, and between them sat a quiet understanding. They had not fixed the world. They had not ended suffering, but they had answered a knock and left the door open. They say money changes people, but sometimes it's compassion that rewires your soul. Elias Monroe gave a piece of his body to a woman society overlooked, but what he received in return was something no boardroom ever gave him: purpose, peace, and a family he never saw coming. Raina Dawson didn't ask for pity. She asked for nothing at all, and yet through her strength, her illness, her fight to simply stay, she reminded us what quiet courage looks like. Noah, Elena, a hallway apartment, a center built not from wealth, but from wounds turned into shelter. This story was never just about a millionaire or a sick mother. It was about the invisible people, the ones who deliver food at night, who carry burdens without complaint, who wait for a knock that never comes, until now. Let this story be a reminder: dignity isn't earned by power, it's preserved through empathy. If this touched your heart, let others hear it too. Like this video. share it with someone who needs to feel seen, and most of all, subscribe to our channel for more stories that challenge prejudice, celebrate strength, and remind us we're never as alone as we think. We'll see you in the next one. And remember, this door stays open.